welcome to Enquire to Choir. My name is Eva and I'm here to help you, fellow choir people. So you're learning a new piece with your choir? Great, I'm so glad you stumbled upon this video. You may notice there is the word efficiently in the title and you may be wondering, what does efficiently mean? Efficiently, in this case for me, means in the least amount of time the choir managed to gather, process, and perform the largest amount of information, making the music piece learned forever. Forever! Yes, forever. So let's start with the video. As I mentioned before in the video about choir rehearsals, I tend to think there are three main stages in learning a new music piece. The first stage is reading the score. There is a saying about reading the notes, the score, for the first time. Imagine a field full of snow, which nobody has walked through yet. Just imagine it. A person walks through the snowfield and leaves their footprints in the snow. The next person who wants to walk through the field will see those footprints and will tend to take the same route the previous person took, following the footprints, because that's the easiest route to take. This is an analogy for reading the music score for the first time. There is a whole lot of snow. You can't even see the field. You can't even see the score. You can't even see this music piece as a whole yet. It is crucial that the first information your choir singers get is the correct one. Because every time you will revisit those notes, your brain will take the same route of remembering it. This means for me, take the time to do this, the first stage, right. Don't just read notes. Don't let your choir just sing the notes with text without anything else. So when you give them the scores, give them a pencil, not a pen, and make them write down all the other information you will be giving them. They should write it down. Teach them to always write it down for two reasons. The first one is they may think, oh, I'll remember it, but they won't. There is too much information to remember. And besides, why should they remember it? It's much easier to write it all down. They can spend their effort thinking of something else during singing without having to think about all the details they have to remember. Secondly, if you stop singing a piece for a few months and then you revisit it, they'll be happy to see all the information are still written down. Already in this first stage, inform them of the right breathing and the right breaths, where they should take breaths and where they mustn't. They will probably not be able to endure all the longer breaths. It's important they already try. Don't let them have a bad vocal technique. Intervene immediately. Connect it with the right pronunciation of every vowel, every consonant. Did I just say vowel? Wrong. Ironic. The body remembers things well, so wrong technique will be harder to correct afterwards. If there are any accents, portatos, tenutos, tend to them immediately. If there are any very complicated rhythms, analyze them, divide them into smaller parts to make them be understood more easily, and take time for the singers to understand them with all the right points. But the most interesting thing to me in this stage is how much you can improve your pitch. If they are flat on any tone, correct it immediately. If their pitch is worsening somewhere, that tends to indicate this place in the score could become or be problematic in the future. So you guessed it, analyze it and correct it immediately. It also comes down to knowing your choir. For example, in one of my choirs, I know the sopranos tend to be very flat when they have a melody descending down with longer notes. I think that's the same for every soprano in every choir, but I could be wrong. I make them notice it right away. I literally say to them, this is a tricky place for you, beware. The point is, if you make them aware of everything this early, it's good. Of course, they're not going to be able to perform everything already. But it's important that the information is already there. The footprints are already there. Sting said it best. Every breath you take I'll be watching you. And yes, you will be annoying to your choir at this stage. You will be called what we in Croatian say picaizla. I will write it down, picaizla. Very meticulously annoying about the details. But your choir will get used to it. If you show them you tend to do the first stage this way and they see the results afterwards, they will appreciate it. So you won't be that annoying all the time, every time. If you're wondering if I will talk about how to do choir parts, I already have in the last week's video, so be sure to check it out. And if you're working with people who can't read music, I have a video for you as well, so you're all set. Now to the next stage. The stage 2 is learning the score as a whole. So your choir knows the score, all the choir parts know their lines, and they have already gone through the whole score together. Now it's time to learn it. And by learn it, I mean to practice it so much that it becomes trained. Where do you start? From the beginning? Yes, most people tend to start from the beginning, but I realized that when you start from the beginning and every time you start from the beginning, the end somehow becomes less practiced, less learned. Sometimes it can even become a time constraint because you have this pressure to learn the whole score and the ending is not practiced so well, it's not going well, and you don't have enough time. I suggest you divide the score in parts. Let's say there are 9 parts. You start with part 9, then go to part 2, then to part 8, then to part 3, then 7, 4, 6, 1, and finally 5. You see the pattern? You start from the last part, then switch to the parts in the beginning, but not the beginning, and then you work up to the middle. You do the very beginning, but the last part you do is the middle. So you connect the first part you learned and the second part you learned. This makes the brain more aware and more challenged. It has to switch the way it's thinking. It's not going linearly. And the best part is the pitch tends to be better when you separate those parts, because the pitch at the beginning of the second part is not always relying on the last pitch in the first part. You understand? So it's not connected, it's divided. So every part tends to be more secure when it comes to pitch if you do it this way. Plus, somehow, when the choir learns the end first, the psyche thinks already they know the whole score. It's more motivating for the choir. Psychology, I know. The third stage is perfecting the score. I love this part. Everybody knows their stuff, everything is learned, and now it's time to play. Pick a part, not pick apart, of the score and work on the details. How much crescendo? Which voice should be louder? How to improve the impact? So many ways you can try things. It's very interesting. I love this phase. But it's also very important to sing the score all the way through several times. It's a big part of training to be able to have enough endurance to sing it from the beginning to the end several times. It's crucial because this way you can see which parts are still a bit insecure, which parts you need to work on. Bear in mind, if the same mistake occurs twice in a row, that was not a mistake. That was a part you need to work on. That is something to be dealt with. Actually, I believe this is not the last stage. It's just the last stage you can do during the rehearsal. The next stage for me will be making the score hibernate, leaving it for a while. This is so important and so difficult to do when you have less time, when you are in time constraints. To leave it for just one rehearsal is so difficult because you think, I shouldn't be leaving this, I should be working on it much more. And sometimes that's true. Sometimes you really don't have enough time to leave it, but trust me, if you have the time to leave it for just one rehearsal, do it, because they are bombarded with the scores and the details and everything about that score, and they don't really have the time to process anything. So if you leave it for just 1 or 2 rehearsals, everything will settle down. It needs the time to settle down. Even if you look at the macro picture, so if you have performed it several times and you have been singing it several seasons, try leaving it for a year. They say you have to do this with poetry. You write a poem, you're working on it really long, and then you have to leave it to rest for years. And then you come to the last stage, which is actually stage number 5, revisiting the score. I really hope you get the chance to revisit some of the scores you've done previously with your choir. I hope you get the chance to revisit something after years. Currently, I'm able to revisit some things from 5 years ago, and it's amazing how your perspective shifts. Yes, of course, most of the singers now in the choir are not the same singers I had 5 years ago, but that's okay. It's somehow a new song, but it's an old song. But if the singers are mostly the same, you will be amazed how well they remember the piece. Because if you've done the first stage very meticulously, the information is there. You just have to retrieve it again. If you're repeating a score they already know but they haven't sung in a while, just push them into water, make them sing it all the way through. If they have the time to, read the notes again and then you connect it again, their brains are not in working mode that much. If you push them, okay, let's start, just sing, and you start playing the piano, for example, and start singing it for them, they have to connect to it immediately, they have to tend to it immediately, they have to activate their memory lanes immediately, so they show up with so much knowledge they already have about the piece. So try it. I hope you get the chance to do this. And that's it. I really hope this was helpful. Let me know down in the comment section if it was. And I just want to say thank you for all the comments and emails I keep getting from you. I had a really bad week this week. I felt really alone, and I don't know, somehow you tend to send me stuff at a point where I'm feeling really down. So thank you for this. I never thought that this would be one of the impacts of Enquire to Choir. It feels nice to be understood. Conduct well, conductors, and I'll see you next time. Bye!